Welcome to This Wild Journey, the podcast where your body, your brain, and your battle plan come together. If you're reeling from betrayal trauma, drowning in the chaos of divorce or custody court, feeling overwhelmed by post-trauma parenting, you are in the right place. We're here to untangle hard truths that bring clarity and courage so you can reclaim your power, protect your peace, and resolve trauma without reliving it. Let's get to work.
Hey friends, Bren here. Welcome back. Today, we're talking about something so important for any protective parent navigating family court: hiring the right attorney. Because let's be real, choosing a lawyer feels overwhelming. You're already dealing with stress, trauma, and legal confusion, and now you're supposed to interview attorneys and make a huge decision that has the power to impact your entire future? Where do you even start? And that's exactly what we're unpacking here today. And of course, I have Sarah here to break it all down. Sarah is the brilliant mind behind Freedom Navigator, where she strategically guides protective parents through high conflict family court battles with clarity and confidence. Sarah, this is such a big question. Why is it so critical to ask the right questions before hiring an attorney?
Oh, Bren, because the wrong attorney can actually really hurt your case. Not all attorneys are created equal. So many survivors go into a legal consultation thinking every lawyer knows best. And the truth is, yes, you need to trust your representation and let them do their job. But it's important to know that not all attorneys understand abuse or coercive control or high conflict custody cases. And if you don't ask the right questions up front, you could end up with a lawyer who doesn't have a clue how abusers manipulate the court system and that both parties here are not operating in good faith. A lawyer who just wants you to settle when you actually need to fight in order to keep your kids safer. A lawyer who treats your case like it's some standard, random, amicable divorce instead of a case where coercive control is front and center.
That's huge. So it's not just about hiring the attorney with the most experience. It's finding someone who actually understands the dynamics of abuse.
Yeah.
I know you have an ebook that helps protective parents through the steps of finding a killer attorney. But let's talk about 3 questions that every protective parent should ask before hiring a lawyer.
Yes. So let's go over 3 of the most critical questions that can quickly help you discern if an attorney is a good fit or might be at high risk. Now, this isn't everything you need to know, but these 3 questions will definitely get you started. So question number 1, what is your experience with high conflict custody cases?
Okay, so this seems like a obvious question, but why is it so important?
Well, it's important because not all divorce attorneys understand that high conflict custody cases may not actually be mutually high conflict at all. Instead, very often, what the court views as a high conflict custody case actually be coercive control by an abusive ex-partner who's really trying to hurt the victim partner and oftentimes using the kids to do so. And most lawyers are trained to settle cases, which is great for saving money with a normal, straightforward divorce. Let's just get to the settlement, get to the table, figure out the finances. And then, that's fine for bringing 2 reasonable people to figure out what's equitable. But when you're dealing with an abusive, coercive, manipulative, deceptive ex-partner who lies and forces and threatens and intimidates and manipulates the system, well, focusing on just getting things settled can really backfire. So
Hmm.
if that's your situation, you need an attorney who knows how abusers use the court to maintain control. You need an attorney who has experience handling false allegations and custody battles and protective orders. You need an attorney who isn't going to just push you to just cooperate with a manipulative, coercive ex for the sake of an easy finish. So
Hmm.
when you ask this question, the question being, what is your experience with high conflict custody cases? You're going to want to listen carefully to how an attorney responds. So if they say things like, well, we just encourage amicable co parenting, that's a red flag unless they also acknowledge that co parenting isn't always safe, and if they can articulate why and when it isn't safe. Or if they say, well, we just try to do our best to reduce conflict. Well, that's great in normal cases, but it can be dangerous if your ex is highly manipulative or deceptive. So you want to hear something like, I have extensive experience handling coercive control cases where it's a non traditional situation, where a
Hmm.
traditional straightforward divorce isn't really an option. You want to hear something like, I understand that it's possible for abusers to weaponize the court system, and I know how to help my clients navigate this reality with strategic, creative solutions.
Mm. That makes so much sense. You're not just hiring a lawyer, you're hiring a legal advocate who absolutely must understand the battle you're in.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads us to question number two, which is, how do you handle false allegations from the other party? Or how do you help me handle false allegations from the other party?
Oh, wow. This one's huge. So many
Mhm.
parents I talk to say their ex flat out lies in court, and they feel so helpless to fight back.
Yeah, exactly. So, an abusive, deceptive, coercive person, you already know that they love making false allegations, whether it's counterclaiming your children's disclosures of abuse by saying that you are alienating the kids, or
Mm,
whether it's claiming that you're unstable or an unfit parent, even though maybe they let you be the completely unsupported full-time stay-at-home parent for the last 15 years, but now
mm,
suddenly you're unfit, right?
mm,
Or whether they're twisting your own words or your actions against you. And a good attorney will know how to help you shut that down. So when you ask this question, how do you handle false allegations from the other party? You're looking to hear the attorney tell you a strategy. A good experienced attorney might say something like, well, we focus on the documented evidence, not on emotional arguments. Or I help my clients build a pattern of credibility to counter false claims. Or I know how to handle false parental alienation accusations to help them not derail your case. But if you have an attorney kind of flippantly, casually say things, well, it's just your word against theirs, or we just want to keep the drama down because judges really don't like drama, or there's not much we can do about it. We just need to maximize their parenting time. Then that's a huge risk
mm.
because, on one hand, you need an attorney who doesn't make you fake promises, doesn't tell you they're going to get you full custody or that they can just guarantee to navigate this with you. But at the same time, false allegations are pretty darn predictable in cases with abuse and coercive control. So your lawyer needs to have a plan in place.
That's so empowering. Just knowing that there are strategies to counter false claims.
Right. Yeah. And that leads us to question number three. How do you approach mediation in cases that have a history of harm?
This is a big one because in the current family court climate, it's very common for most cases to be expected to start with mediation, no matter what.
Right. And, and quite often, you're going to be required in many regions to start with mediation regardless, because that's kind of a standard first step.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're dealing with an abusive environment or an abusive ex-partner, your attorney needs to have a good plan for mediation, even
Mm-hmm.
if you're still going to take that step. Because here's the problem. The whole mediation process assumes that both parties are negotiating in good faith. And in abuse cases, we all know that's not happening.
Right.
So an abusive ex is going to use mediation to try to manipulate the process, to try to force unfair agreements, to gaslight you into doubting your position, to avoid accountability by pretending to be reasonable, but then maybe they don't actually agree to anything and don't sign the papers. They're going to delay and drag things out and drive up costs. And often that'll be under the guise of good faith negotiations, but it's really just a game to them. So when you ask this question, you want a lawyer who understands that mediation isn't always safe. And you need an attorney that understands that you may have to walk away from mediation if it's putting your children or your case at further risk or in danger. So if an attorney tells you when you're consulting with them, well, mediation is required, so you're just going to have to figure out where to compromise. Well, that's kind of a red flag. They're not understanding the nuance of the situation. Or if they say, hey, it is pretty much always best to settle outside of court. We want to just avoid getting you in front of a judge. We want to avoid court at all possible costs. Well, not always if your ex is an abuser. Instead, you want to look for answers that might sound something like, yes, we're required to start with mediation, but you don't have to agree to anything that isn't safe or reasonable. Or we're going to treat mediation as a fact-finding mission to see where the other side stands. And we are only going to agree to things that are in your children's best interest. Or I will work to ensure that mediation doesn't put you at a legal disadvantage. Or if mediation proves to be unsafe, I will take steps to try and have it waived or handled with a different strategic approach.
Yeah, this is so powerful. Just these 3 questions alone can tell you so much about whether an attorney actually understands abuse dynamics.
Yes, exactly. And I've broken down more information just like this in my ebook called Finding a Lawyer Who Fights. The bottom line is this: never assume an attorney understands abuse just because they've handled lots of divorces. Don't be afraid to ask direct, strategic questions before you hire them or sign an engagement contract. Remember, your attorney works for you, not the other way around. And listen carefully to their answers because your future depends on it.
Yeah, that's so important. And Sarah, I know that you've put all of this into one powerful resource, so protective parents don't have to figure out these questions on their own.
Yes. So my Finding a Lawyer Who Fights ebook gives you a clear, easy to understand outline of the 6 most important traits to look for when hiring your attorney, and the number one thing a good attorney will focus on when they're talking to you. And I've included the one major tip-off that means you should walk away from a consult so that you don't waste money on the wrong attorney. And because I know how overwhelming this process is, it's just $7. So anyone who needs it can grab it.
Friends, if you're hiring a lawyer for family court, this powerful expert guide is a must-have. So grab it at the link below. And if today's episode was helpful, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who needs it. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, you don't have to walk this wild journey alone.
See you next time, guys. Brought to you by Wilderness to Wild. www.thiswildjourneypodcast.com